Hello, everyone. My name's Rick McCutcheon. I'm a Dynamics 365 MVP, and I'm here today with David Kohar from eLogic. David, introduce yourself and tell the people about your organization and what you do.
Yeah, fantastic, Rick. First of all, thanks for having me on Partner Talk. This is awesome to join you for a few minutes on the session. So yes, I'm David Kohar. I'm partner at eLogic, and we think of ourselves actually in a lot of ways, Rick, as a three cloud partner with Microsoft, or we present ourselves really as an industry solution for manufacturing, representing the whole Microsoft cloud that they have in market, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here, I'm sure, in a second.
Okay, so let's kind of get into your Dynamics practice. I know you've got an area of specialty. We've talked about manufacturing, and I think that's a very exciting spot to be in for a Dynamics practice. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Happy to dive in more. So when we think of our business and how we go and help customers, as you mentioned, we just focus on manufacturing organizations. So we always start there with, and that could run across everything from industrial equipment manufacturers to equipment dealers to all the way out to high-tech manufacturing. But our core is working first and foremost with manufacturing customers. From there, as I think about some of the areas we'll dive into that around our Dynamics and Power Platform businesses, we really look at it pretty holistically in terms of like even service or sales, for example. If I was to extend the sales conversation, it really is how do we pull in data and AI, modern workplace, and the Dynamics 365 suites to provide more of a modern selling experience for customers. And as you start to dig into that more, you start to think about LinkedIn and all the other components that actually make up that solution for a manufacturer or for a manufacturing sales team. So that's really kind of where we like to begin and really help solution with our customers in that kind of way.
So when we talk about manufacturing sales teams, being located in Southern Ontario, I've done a lot of manufacturers over the years in CRM, and it's amazing how these large organizations run on so many different data systems, right? So much information in different places, and a lot of the sales teams probably still today run on spreadsheets. So, where do you start when you go into an organization?
Yeah, good point. So we've, just as for a bit of a backdrop, we've tended to work with large organizations. Thinking about it from a Microsoft segmentation standpoint in the enterprise space, working our way into working more and more with some of the upper, SMC or mid-market customers. So interestingly enough, what we tend to see now is that most organizations are running some kind of a sales solution that they've at least landed on, and maybe with different levels of success around adoption, but certainly starting there. What we're actually seeing is a lot of these customers are really at this point they're looking for more, and I think maybe this is a little bit where you were going with working with all these other systems and everything else. It's they're putting a whole bunch of data into their sales application, but the sales team actually still isn't driving that benefit that we've been talking about. I know you and I have been at this for a long time. So it's like over the last 20 years, we've talked about how can the solution actually help the sales team. And what I'm seeing more and more of now is us being able to work with our customers to actually make that happen. And that's where I think things are getting really exciting.
So, you were talking the other day to me about the AI tools, and I think that's a space for growth. And, when I think about AI tools, every time someone brings it up, I think about, wow, wouldn't it be great to be able to pull that type of information out of your data? Then I think about the data, right? The data is all over the place. It's in different shapes and sizes and different systems. So, how are we going to be able to get AI to work properly is probably one question. But the other question is, in the manufacturing scenario, I remember the sales teams I've worked with, they'd go to 4 different systems. One system to place the order, one system to get the quote, one system that was their contact management, and most of them had a spreadsheet going that had all the information together. So how do we get the data into a condition where we need it to be to have these AI tools work?
Yeah. So, 100% of our conversations around this topic start with our data sucks. Full stop, right? That's every manufacturer starts with that. And so now we start to unravel that a little bit, and not in disagreement that when you start to dig into the data, there's a lot of holes in them. There's certain places though where I think we all land on pretty quickly, where we can get a high value, in a relatively low period of time. When you think about the idea that sales orders, tend to be the cleanest data that a manufacturer has when it comes to like thinking about customer data or customer relevant data, right? In the end, that is what drives what they're, reporting to the street of their revenue and everything else, right? It's derived from that. So we tend to think of that as a cleanest source to begin with. And there's a lot that we can do actually, even just with their sales order data, to help drive some of these insights back to the sales team to make it a much more productive experience. So think of things that we've been in on, and I'll jump in here a little bit further, Rick, is the classic example of, even if you break down a customer as a salesperson that you're working with, you think of two primary vectors. One is, am I continuing to sell at least as much or more of the products I'm already selling to you? How is that going? And then of the products that are relevant to you as a customer, but I'm not selling to those products to you yet, how do we actually surface that up? So we've actually broken it into that kind of thinking, and I'm taking this down to sort of, from data science terms down to layman's terms. But when we look at it, that RFM analysis tends to be a very solid way of treating your current sales with a customer. And so, RFM then gives you that recency and frequency to tell you, look, this customer who was buying, 10 units a month is now dropped to 5, or maybe they're buying 10, but it's every second month. Those are the sorts of insights that our sales, manufacturing sales customers are saying, that is important for us. We need to stay on top of our current business. Now flip that, and where do you actually start to, provide the sales team with actually really relevant suggestions or recommendations where, that when they look at them, they don't just say, yeah, that's just too vanilla. Like the customer doesn't need this product, where they look at it and think, okay, that actually is a really relevant recommendation. And so that's where the data science really also kicks in on the recommendation side on what the customer is not buying. So that's really where we're seeing a lot of the interest and the traction currently.
And I think you nailed it there on a couple points. First, that accounting data is usually the best starting point within an organization to say, this is going to be 90% accurate. Like, let's start there, and then we'll start pulling in these other data sources. But you made a good point there, because a lot of times that accounting data is siloed, and they don't ever really start drilling into it and looking at it to the year end, or 3 to 6 months past the year end, when they start doing that analysis on a territory, saying, why was there a 25% drop? Whereas with AI, it's proactive, right? So we're looking at, hey, what are the trends that are happening now today? And if you think the ROI on that could be incredibly high for a manufacturer.
Yeah, that's where we're really, where we're seeing the biggest impact now. So whether it's using their ERP system and pulling their sales orders, or depending on how they've set up their sales application, a lot of times what we're seeing, with some of, at least our customers, is that they've done their quoting and whatnot inside of Dynamics 365. So you have actually a source there as well to know at least what was sold to them. So we can always, we always drill into a customer, what's the best data source ultimately. But there are a couple of core places where we like to begin, because back to your point, if the conversation always begins with, our data sucks, how can we ever do this? And if we can have a great place to start, where in fact our data science team has actually come up with a formula for saying, if you can give us these 20 columns from your sales orders, here's what we can actually turn around. And it's actually quite, it's amazing, the output, but it's actually quite revealing to a manufacturer to think, wow, you can get that much insight off of 20 columns of data.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because you're giving them maybe not a small task, but a medium task to complete. And then they're going to see some real ROI from just doing that.
Yes, and that is the second thing. Right after we talk about the fact that their data sucks, the next thing is, how much work is this possibly going to be for us to actually get this data in a shape or to you or into the solution, such that, how much effort is that going to be. So we've knocked down these impediments one at a time, to really get to a point where the customer can start seeing very quickly. And, we can do a proof of concept in a couple of weeks just to show them what that data will look like, and they can start to iterate on that. So it's not this grand, just trust us, and in 9 months from now, this is going to be great. We've actually, been doing some very iterative work with customers, and it's really rewarding what they're seeing.
So David, we look at, what we're kind of working on today, what we're doing today in the manufacturing space. We're seeing a lot of technology changes, right? They've already had the back office, the manufacturing, just in time, robotics, everything going on there. And now they're starting to automate sort of that front office, their sales teams. What do you see that really excites you about what's coming in the space?
Yeah. So I think of three categories, Rick, in this respect. And of course, 2020 has driven a lot of this to just happen much more quickly. People are thinking, how can I do everything remote? How can I do everything through a new sales channel like commerce or portals? And how can I get a better return on these sales solutions or service solutions that I've put in place already to start getting more intelligence out of the solution so that our teams perform better, right? And I've spent a bunch of time talking about sales. I mean, we're seeing it in spades on the service side as well. Like, how do we start connecting to the equipment and start being more proactive in service and not waiting for a break fix scenario? So all this stuff is just getting pushed to the forefront right now, because this is where the actual, this is where we can make tangible, impact for the customer. It's not as squishy as some of the other investments they've perhaps made in the past.
So is there any sort of technology like HoloLens or anything like that you see that the manufacturers are going to start grabbing a hold of?
Yeah, I think, Microsoft has done some really cool things in this space. So things like, HoloLens or Remote Assist. I think on the service side in particular, we're seeing some really interesting use cases and applications, and people are from everything from using it in their manufacturing plants all the way out to how they're doing more, more intelligent, I'll say, field service is definitely a trend that at least every single customer needs to know about it now. And, then they'll stage it into their implementation.
And, on the hardware side of things, just what's available in tablets and the power, right? We're seeing more and more of these ISVs start to develop sort of inspection-like tech applications and health and safety applications, which really all ties back to dynamics. So I think the width of what you're going to be able to offer is just going to keep growing.
Yeah. The other big trend that we're seeing, of course, is that, and again, this is our reality because we're working mostly with large manufacturers. They're running Microsoft in the front office and they're running SAP in the back office. So in a lot of ways, what they're looking for from eLogic is to say, how do we best solution, for some of these activities that we have, we need to do, or these key business processes that we need to enable moving forward. And so where we're seeing a lot of traction is, connecting the Power Platform to SAP, or, pulling data out of SAP to do the kind of sales insights that we were talking about earlier. So those sorts of trends we're seeing in spades here right now.
Okay. Well, David, thanks for your time today. I'm going to keep in touch with you to find out what's going on in the manufacturing space. But, as I say, you're in the right place at the right time for this digital transformation.
Rick, it's always a pleasure being on and chat with you. And thanks for having me on Partner Talks.
Thank you.